Zion reps is just the one today, is it?
Yeah, I think so on our end.
Perfect. Well, take the mic. A little introduction on yourself, background in Web3, and why you're bullish on chain abstraction.
Awesome. Yeah, dude. First of all, thanks for getting this together. Obviously, I appreciate it. And I'm actually really, really excited for this conversation. You're right. A little bit spontaneous, but those are always the best ones, right? So, but yeah, my name, Burnt Banksy. I got that name about 3 years ago. I lit a Banksy art piece on fire, and then sold it as an NFT. It ended up being the highest average price NFT, on OpenSea for all of 2021. I'm still in Wikipedia for that today. Before that, the story getting into crypto via mining and then just kind of getting lost, proverbially in the sauce. And kind of after that, building chain abstraction didn't really exist when I started building, but if it had, it would have been called chain abstraction, which is awesome to hear. And I think you look at where we are in the industry and you look at all the benefits that crypto can provide and how hard it is to actually access. It's a miracle we've gotten this far. Abstraction because of this industry, and I believe everyone should be able to have access to it.
Amazing. So Banksy, can you tell the story of like how you guys started tackling this and what did you call it before chain abstraction was a thing to sort of like categorize this thing you're building?
Yeah, it was. That's a great question. So, it really, it first not like there was no reason we wanted to build a chain, like at all. Had no intention of doing this. It just ended up being one of those things, which is we didn't really have a narrative. We had a North Star, right? The North Star was very simple, right? We wanted to create Web2 experiences so that products could exist in this industry. We actually, ideation of Zion's a completely USD. Still have issues with that. So then it was USDC chain that abstracts and the network, the scalability ended up being kind of walking into protocol level of kind of abstraction. So it's like, I think the closest thing is we've definitely been saying abstraction for a while, generalized abstraction in our white paper. And then I think we call it, abstracted interoperability for the aspect of like chain abstraction,
Yeah,
as it
love that.
relates to like the cake framework. But definitely yelling abstraction.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I remember seeing an interaction with you with I think it was Jim from one of our I think mutual investors.
Figment?
Oh, sorry, lost you there for a sec.
Figment?
Yes,
Oh,
Jim
Figment?
and yeah, I
Yeah.
was super fascinated with sort of like this idea of because there when I saw there was already some rumblings of this new chain abstraction narrative, but it seemed like you guys were sort of like ahead of the curve there. So super excited to talk more. So in what is Zion as it is designed today, right? You mentioned initially you didn't want to build a chain. Now I think there is a chain component. Like what does the infra sort of look like? Have we lost Banksy? Um,
Any better?
That's better, man. We got you now.
Beautiful. Awesome. Sorry about that.
Carry on.
All good.
Jasper
No
was
worries.
asking you about the general architecture of Zion. Originally, you didn't want to have a chain, and now you do, and you got this general abstraction layer. So if you want to dive in a little bit on that, it would be amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, a lot of it kind of started, as I mentioned, a lot of it kind of started with, I would say a lot of it probably more so started from like an account abstraction perspective, which was looking at 4337 and understanding the kind of the limitations of that and trying to fix I would say the fragmentation with 4337. And that kind of looked like a non-custodial MPC wallet. And then I think there was just aspects to this, like we needed to be able to accept USDC for gas payments, which then required us to kind of have a Cosmos chain, and obviously that TWAP is done via Osmos, which is really awesome. And then I think also at the time working with Noble for native USDC, and then CCTP for kind of the swap of that. There's definitely, I would say there's a lot of aspects, but you kind of look at it and 2.5 years ago at this point, Jesus, kind of basing a lot of these decisions off of the Cosmos SDK, and then really, really tinkering it very hard. And, for anyone who wants kind of more information on that, I definitely implore to read the white paper. And I know, I don't know how much alpha this is, but there will definitely be another one just because there's a lot more that went into it.
Makes sense. There's a V2 white paper coming soon. That sounds great.
As you have to do. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. No, the same here, man. Like our docs are also quite outdated on sort of like the architecture side. Just to sort of jump in here and go off of what you said, Banksy, on like how we see the sort of like space and fragmentation. So we are building Oracle infra, right? So we're building this first party Oracle, and during last bull run, it was quite successful. So we were securing like almost $4 billion of value. We enabled almost $200 billion of like value transfer with this like Oracle infra. But we already noticed that we were supporting like 4 or 5 chains. It was quite hard to scale and to actually support many chains, right? And you're seeing this with Oracle providers today, like the integration fees are up and to the right, and they're
absolutely insane.
yeah, and the timelines are nuts. So what we decided to do is sort of like see like, hey, is there a technological solution that we can come up with that sort of like could be possible in the next 2 years that will enable the same sort of like Oracle infra as we had just natively on Ethereum at the time, right? Like Ethereum had this Oracle contract where anybody could come and build upon and sort of like build DeFi products or any sort of products on top of. Without you having to have permission, right? Those feeds were just available. So that was sort of like our starting off point. And we came up with this design, turning to SEDA, where essentially you're able to prove SEDA state, so Oracle state, on any chain using the same standard. So you have access to all the same data. You have full entropy across sort of like any network, whether it's Solana or Cosmos, doesn't matter. And then from there, we started thinking like, hey, maybe it makes sense to actually make the data feeds also generalized and programmable. So you can deploy new feeds. So not only price feeds, but you can also have like interoperability modules, and that allows people to query any data from any chain to any chain without us having to integrate for them. You just run this relayer that sort of like bridges data to the destination chain, and you're good to go. It's sort of like an intent-centric approach. So yeah, I think there's some overlap there in our thinking and sort of like catching this wave of anti-fragmentation early. So lovely to talk today.
Yeah, I mean, listen, man. I mean, I really do. You know, I think you look at the modular versus monolith versus whatever integrated world too, and I think, and of course I don't want to speak for you, but I think our position is it doesn't really matter, right? Because there's more than just Ethereum now, and I think the idea that one chain's going to rule them all has already been disproven via Solana at least. And so whether there's a billion chains or a million chains, it shouldn't matter because we need to be accounting for scalability. And even as you said, 4 or 5 chains, you're starting to reach scaling issues. 4 or 5 million is probably going to be a little worse than that.
100%. Yeah. Put the power in the hands of the developers is sort of how we see it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's like a really annoying thing about crypto right now. Probably every early tech cycle, right? Which is this idea of, hey, we need to move fast. We need to break things. Right now there's this issue. Let's take gas, for example. It's very expensive because we want low infrastructure requirements to be able to run nodes. So gas is very expensive and it's very slow. Rather than taking the time to try to solve that, let's just put that burden onto the user. And you see this a lot. And now we're getting to this point in the industry where now it's time to kind of proverbially, if not literally, pay for it or kind of start to fix it. And I think putting it in the hands of developers is starting to be a significantly better decision, very similarly to the way that someone would work with, say, an AWS.
Definitely. Yeah, I think the sort of like parallel between servers and rollups is going to become more and more relevant, especially as app chains sort of take off. These application specific like rollups. Yeah, at some point it's going to become so easy to spin up your own rollup that is fully decentralized and permissionless. Like, why would you build it on a third party and have them benefit off of sort of like user flow?
Yeah. I mean, what was the fat chain thesis? Wow, I can't believe I'm blanking on that. I used to quote it all the time. But I do think that we should get to a place where it's actually viable to be a product in this industry, and then maybe we can revisit this conversation, right? Which is right now, like our main standpoint is there's no users in this industry because there's no products, and there's no products and there's no users, right? Total of this industry is people who own MetaMask. And we're unable to have, let's say, a Facebook moment for the industry because the momentum required for that growth isn't achievable with the insane friction rates that we're seeing. And I do believe that once we see, once we actually see like consumer velocity being able to outpace whatever loss there is in friction, I do think that's when you have this kind of tipping point in the industry. I actually do believe that we're very, very close to that.
Beautiful. One more thing, sorry, man, and then I'll pass it back to you. Banksy, how do you feel about the constant argument that we don't need new infra, people just need to build apps? Like, I've been hearing this every conference for the last 2 years, like there's too many infra projects, too many infra projects, people just need to build applications. What's your thoughts?
Why? Like the issue is that it doesn't financially make sense to be an application in this industry, right? And I think, yeah, sure, we can all sit here and say, oh, well, we as two infrastructure providers can say, hey, we need less infrastructure, but at some point, that's just bullshit, right? And there's a reason, right? Like, I think there's always like there's a hypothetical infrastructure, which is, wow, we could hypothetically reach 100 million transactions per second, knowing damn well that there's 11 people in this industry. Right. And maybe less of that, but I do think that there is actual infrastructure that'll always kind of come place, which, not to shill Zion, but I think when you have problems that people actually want and are known, right? Like there's a 95% fall off rate when the user is prompted with a wallet. Like that is a solvable problem. The fact of saying, hey, in 5 years, hypothetically, if all this stuff works, then we're going to need to do this. Like we need to solve the problems for now. And I think that it's fair and smart and wise to be solving the problems for now. I do think, of course, right? Like we are trying to onboard products and we're seeing, I mean, you saw yesterday with massive success, we had a campaign NOS with Uber, Sunglass Hut, Baskin Robbins, and North Face, right? And all these brands were interacting with people who had no idea. There was absolutely no mention of wallets, absolutely no mention of crypto, and a completely global experience. And it's one of those things which is saying, well, now that we have this, there's actually no way in the world to send $5 to 2 million people, unless like without an American bank account, which is the hardest thing in the world to get. So being able to do that and like actually take the benefits of crypto and being able to lean on that and kind of go hard into that without trying to find the solutionist outtake is exactly what I do need, right? And like you're still getting infrastructure projects for the internet. Like infrastructure investment is never going to die. Deep tech is never going to die. But I do think that if you look at the top 100 on CoinMarketCap, maybe 3 of them are applications. And you look at, even as projects fundraise for us, it's like, well, why do you need a token? Right? And like it's so ingrained that token equals infrastructure. And it's just kind of the way of thinking in this industry where we are too young. The frictions are there and we need to continuously invest in infrastructure because we're not there yet. And I think that's shown in the past. I mean, it's probably more than 2 years, but we effectively have 5 applications in this industry. We have like DEXs, NFT marketplaces, airdrop farming protocols, and prediction markets, right? And that's kind of it.
Exactly. I'd say like payments is a big one that people do not give enough credit to. But yeah, that's for sure. I fully echo your calling bullshit on the we don't need infra anymore. I think there was very much an infrastructure gap that needed to still be filled before we can see mainstream applications. But yeah, I was curious what your thoughts were there because I fully echo your sentiment there.
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to stop, and it shouldn't. We should continue to progress. That would be stupid.
I'd love to talk about progressing. I'd love to learn a little bit more about your sort of framing of Zion in general, sort of abstraction for. Do you sort of view it as just for consumers? As sort of like this is where they'll come and brands will build the best experience possible? Or do you guys also think about Zion as sort of a layer that extracts other chains and connects that to Zion for the user directly. What's sort of your framing in the short to midterm and long term on sort of like what part of the stack you're aiming for, or both?
That's a great question. I think that's a really good question. And I think with, with being in this industry, which is so intentionally vague, it is the reason we say consumer is because we built tools. And again, let's go back to our North Star. We want people to not know that they're interacting with crypto. And so that goes both ways, right? Because now we also need to find a reason for people to use applications, if not for crypto, right? And like, sure, there's payments, but I think the way, the thing that I always say is like, we're not trying to onboard the grandparents of this generation so that they can fling perpetuals on Hyperliquid. And that's just not, that's a waste of what we've built in my mind. Not to say anything negative against Hyperliquid and any dexes, but it's just not our market, right? And so to be a lean team that needs to have a focus as a startup, we understand, and I think the way that internally the team is operating is let's have our small niche, right? Let's try to win that niche, and then being able to kind of go outside after that, right? And I think the beautiful thing about chain abstraction is, and I've been in this industry for many years, but it really does feel like the first time that you genuinely get composability between companies. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I see Tabasco, not to call you out here, but like Particle Network, Tabasco, like these guys are also pioneering chain abstraction and like this one account to rule them all kind of aspect of it. And kind of working with them to be able to do that will be freaking awesome. And then there's people like Hyperlane, lower on the cake framework that also exists to serve these kind of purposes. And I think working with 8 companies to get one thing done it's beautiful, right? And I think it's kind of awesome that you kind of have this composability for the first time. And I think you see this issue a lot, which is, and at least when we were fundraising, people would ask me, oh, how are you going to steal users from Solana? How are you going to steal users from Aptos? And I think our answer to that is, well, we don't give a fuck, right? Like, we don't care about the chains. We care about the product. So as long as you're a product, we'll absolutely work with you. We did this on Injective. We did this on Neutron, and doing this with Solana, AVAX, BNB, you kind of name it. But the idea being, we have 15 people in this industry and we're fighting over the crumbs here. The real way to get to that next level, it's impossible to do it alone, right? And I'm very, very grateful for people like Tabasco and Particle and Agoric and Socket and Orb, right? Because we're able to kind of have this vision, we're able to all kind of achieve it together, which is a really, really freaking awesome thing.
I think that's a super good point about sort of like the symbiosis of sort of like the infra providers within the chain abstraction frameworks. I think it's interesting to see how we are sort of pivoting from where we first had sort of like application to application, full composability with DeFi, etc., that had some network effect. But now with this modularity, sort of like these modular standards coming up, we're actually seeing like infra to infra composability, or like middleware to middleware composability. And I think that's a little bit new. And I think the power that unlocks is really what we're talking about right now.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I remember building in this industry and Wormhole coming to Solana for the first time. Before that, it was a freaking nightmare to do anything. And I remember even bridging NFTs didn't work, right? And it's beautiful to be like, even when the intent narrative kind of started coming out, it was funny because it was like, oh, okay, so the real innovation in this industry is saying, hey, I want to do something, and then it actually happening. But that's kind of crazy.
That's almost VK level magic that you're describing there.
Can I extend a little bit on what Peter was saying? When you say like brands, let's say that we get to that point that you're talking about where we can actually have more than 15 people, we can have 20, 25 plus and just explode. What kind of brands do you think are going to come on? What are they going to be building? We had a similar conversation with Flow, and it was interesting to talk like about the brands that they're talking with and what they're thinking about building. But when we have this general abstraction layer, what do you see being built on top first?
So I think Flow is a great example. And I think Polygon is probably the best example but I think Flow is an interesting example because you had, I guess let me say my point and then I'll give the anecdotal evidence, right? The point is that you had this 2021 kind of cycle meta of extreme solutionism, as it said, hey, brands meet infrastructure, meet an L1, right? And the best example of this. I'm pretty sure I actually just read that Reddit was sunsetting their NFTs, but Reddit, Starbucks, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars in market value just kind of lost because of solutionism and not stupidity, because I do think that they had great intentions, but as it kind of related to what it is, it's too hard and it makes zero sense to be like, brand, use crypto, right? When in reality, you look at something like an Earn OS, which is saying, okay, well, let's give you the tools to be able to solve a problem that people actually need, and then working with brands in that capacity, right? In the capacity that they needed. And for me, I'll be honest, during the bear market, this was a really mentally hard thing to get myself around, which was like, let's say I got a meeting with Disney, what the fuck would I pitch them? Am I just like crypto? Like, how do I just put crypto into Disney? It doesn't fucking work, right? But if you have people who are actually solving problems and then you say, oh, I think Disney could actually benefit from this problem that I'm solving, then you actually get something real, right? And loyalty programs have existed before. Amex points have always existed. Well, I don't, you know what I mean? But like, nothing is new, right? And so if you're trying to just say, oh, these are points, but they're on the blockchain and it's significantly harder for all of your users to use, then yeah, you're going to lose $40 million. I'm sorry. But Flow is an interesting aspect because Flow kind of created this online trading shop, right? And Top Shots, right? And then they said, okay, what do people like trading? Fucking NBA cards, right? And then you had NBA Top Shots, which was the most successful product of its time, following after the other most successful product being CryptoKitties, right? Which had no brands, right? But then saying, let's take this trading card aspect and then actually working with brands to get this real, right? Because if you kind of think about it, Top Shots is just CryptoKitties, but with NBA, right? And it worked so fucking well. It brought so many people in and it brought Flow to what it was. And then they fucked it up, right? And now you get NHL Top Shots, and you get you reuse. It's innovator's dilemma at that point, right? Which is, do you innovate from there, try to do something new, or do you kind of milk that out, or moonshots, whatever you kind of look at it at, right? And I think at that point, it then became this brand game, and you kind of lost the original idea of let's build something that people want and then target the brands, rather than the other way around, which I feel a lot of this industry has kind of been in, which is let's just target the fucking block headline and then work our way backwards, because that's just never going to work.
That's amazing. Agreed.
100%. And do you have brands that are reaching out now, or is that just like as Peter was saying, like in your long-term vision, are brands interested in reaching out now, or what you're kind of saying is like we're building something that's going to be useful for them, but it's not ready yet, so we're not even going to bother having that conversation?
I don't ever want to talk to brands. I would have nothing to say. I would give products, people who want to build companies, people who want to build products, the tools that they need to be able to reach these brands. But we are not interacting with brands. That is not going to be our job. That is not going to be our success. Our success will be like the definition of success for Zion is being completely silent, right? It's very similar to any hosting website or anything like that, which is the success comes in whatever exists with our tooling, let's say, is successful. And I think there's this crossing the chasm mentality of, and probably a little bit of ego that gets involved with it, which is, oh, well, we got Starbucks, we got Disney, we have Fortune 500 approval, right? Which is similar to kind of the venture capital model of like, oh, well, we're backed by E16Z and Sequoia. It's like, great, you can still fucking fail, dude.
100%. I really like that you're saying that, because I think the industry needs a bit of a reality check sometimes, so very much appreciate that. I want to pivot the conversation a little bit more into like chain abstraction and the stack. So as I understand, you have this general abstraction layer. And you were saying before, like working with 8 other projects is super good. Like it's a massive collaborative effort. Particle network, the list goes on, the whole cake framework, and those who are doing alternative frameworks as well. Brings me to this question. Do you think we're going to have a battle of the frameworks in chain abstraction that's naturally supposed to be so collaborative, but there are a number of alternative frameworks, especially on the account level? Are we just going to repeat the cycle, and instead of like battling at a chain level, we're going to be battling at a framework level?
Well, you kind of already are doing that at like wallet level, right? Like even with 4337 or like account abstraction is kind of bullshit, like in a lot of ways, because it's just the wallet issue, but prettier, right? It's just making easier wallets. It doesn't really inherently solve it. If anything, it makes it extremely more, it actually perpetuates the fragmentation of everything. And I think like, I'll be honest, like when I first saw the cake framework, I mean, I don't know, frontier research here, I don't know if I'm allowed to shit on the cake framework because it's the fucking gospel of this industry. But like, it's whatever. It's like, hey, here's a fucking solver, here's a fucking account level. It's like the most obvious thing in the world that everyone's just like, oh my God, this is the future of whatever. It's literally like permissions, solving, like it's whatever. Suffice to say, the frameworks don't fucking matter, like at all. I think, and then you're gonna see probably 95% of the companies working now die by the time that we're having this conversation in a year and a half because of the bear market. And that's okay. Like that happens, right? Or they'll go to another narrative or something like that. And that's kind of the thing about narratives, right? Is they're not really what you're building in a certain way, right? Like you can preach abstraction, you could preach North Stars, and if that fits into a narrative, that's phenomenal, but narratives come, narratives go, people come, people go, companies come, companies go.
Do you think we
And
can really support
when
more
it relates,
narratives though? 'Cause I often think to myself as like, it's just like a ticking time bomb, this kind of jumping from narrative to narrative. At some point, this industry has to put out useful products, right? And chain abstraction is obviously quite a bullish narrative because on paper it sounds really amazing and you can get an incredible entry point to bring in lots of people. It's familiar, intuitive, using their apps, blah, 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 blah. Can we really just keep bouncing from narrative to narrative, or are we all just going to be on a sinking ship at that point?
I think AI is the hottest narrative right now, and it's been the hottest narrative since 1958. So, I mean, I think the idea of narratives on every level needs to exist, right? From everywhere from a macro, right? Literally macro all the way down to a micro level. Like we're in a bubble, of course, being in crypto, but I mean, even in tech investing, there will always be narratives, right? There's always the crypto swaps with the AI or the VR and the AR and whatever's next, right? I think it's going to be crypto, but people need narrative. People need something to believe in. People need something to hold on to. People need a way to explain what they're doing in 5 seconds and for people to understand. And so I believe that narratives are a good thing so long as you don't take advantage of it, right? And it's clear people who are going to take advantage of it because it's like, okay, well, you're just talking. There's nothing that you're really showing for it, right? And so if you can ride that narrative wave, get the fucking money, and then make something that people actually want, you're doing it right.
Nice. I have two questions. The first is,
Mhm.
where does the abstraction end? And I think that this is sort of like a follow-up question for what Matt was asking, which is there is going to be a few chain abstraction protocols that are essentially aggregating all of crypto. And then you have three separate aggregates. So now somebody needs to build an aggregator of aggregators, and then somebody will come in and build a competitor, and then somebody will build an aggregator of aggregators. How do you see this ending? And from your answer earlier, it sounded like you said like when the dust settles, there will be one. Is that accurate?
Well, it depends on where you're talking. Like, and it's funny because I was just talking about this yesterday. How about the word of chain abstraction is so painfully intentionally vague that could mean everything. Like, I think the best way that I imagine the end of chain abstraction is when regular people use the internet right now, they're not calling it Web 2. They're on the web, right? And so I think in the same capacity where you're looking at Web 3 products and you're just using the internet, I think that's the end game, right? And then maybe eventually there's going to be a Web 4. Who fucking knows, right? There's going to be something new. Always is. And I think once we can actually cross the chasm into the mainstream, and compete with other Web 2 companies. I fucking hate the word Web 2 and Web 3, quite frankly, but like, because there doesn't need to be this much friction, at all. And so being able to kind of live in this web world, I think is kind of the end goal for that. I mean, you see this with NFT marketplaces in this aggregator thing, which I think is probably interesting, right? And especially like, I mean, back in 2020, I built an NFT marketplace, right? And so this was definitely on my mind, which was, who wins, the NFT marketplace the NFT marketplace aggregator or the aggregator of aggregators, right? It's it'll be interesting to see, right? You definitely don't want Solvis to be extremely centralized, right? You don't want, but at the same point, like ideology doesn't sell as much as problem solving does. So I mean, I know it'll be interesting. I think it's interesting to look at like a Blur maybe versus like where all the actual volume is traded, because I don't really know how much of like the aggregation game is going to win. 'Cause I remember back in 2022, there was aggregators for aggregators for aggregators, and it was like, what the fuck are we doing here, guys? It didn't really get that much past that.
Yeah, then eventually you end up with Swap, who's essentially like
Yeah,
just
exactly.
say like we just let solvers handle it. One more thought there,
Yeah.
Peter, and then you can go. I think the funny thing here is what you said there, Burnt, which was the sort of like disdain for the term Web3. I think that's actually hilarious because Web3 sounds like an upgrade of Web2, but the UX is so dog shit that we don't earn.
It's terrible.
We've not earned that right.
We went backwards.
Yeah. It's like web and a half.
That's what I fucking love about this, right? Because you have like, you look at the adoption rates, and the adoption rates of Web3 mimic that of Web2. And it's so funny to see the people who cheer that, because it's Web2, the fucking internet required hardware investment. The only thing we need is a fucking Chrome extension. We don't even fucking need that anymore. And so it's like, why are we celebrating? Why are we trying to compare ourselves to the internet, which required an insane hardware investment? It's a mockery.
Yeah, I do think that you said something interesting about 2020. That it was kind of hard to see like where the traction was going to go, if it was going to go to the NFT platform that sort of initially listed the token, or if it was the aggregator of all the aggregators. And I think that what we saw in 2020 was success of applications was really chain sort of like chain specific. Yeah, exactly. And so if you had an application that worked really well, that meant that like the users were on that chain, and that wouldn't be shared across other networks, right? And I think that now, when we talk to developers, they say, we're building here for XYZ reason, and it doesn't matter anymore, right? So what's going to determine success is like how many users are able to interact with this platform, and do they actually have a real use case? Not just are there network effects in the specific L1 from incentives or whatever it may be. And I think this is a very big shift, to product sort of adoption, and also what you said, like infrastructure versus apps. Like you really need to continue to innovate around infrastructure, because apps will be keeping sort of us on our toes. They're going to continue to create new features, new sort of primitives that then infrastructure has to make easier and sort of abstract away for the user. And so I think that this is sort of like the moment that we start to go from like, sort of static websites to now having like real web applications, that we need to really now build sort of like really great infrastructure to abstract that for the user.
Yeah. And you have to also remember that bridging wasn't really a thing until 2022.
Right.
I believe, or 2021, 2022. Like, and even when it did come out, like Wormhole is probably my first memory of like bridging. Maybe Axelar for ERC20, but I think Wormhole was the first NFT movement between Solana and Ethereum. And then when I moved my NFTs from Solana to Ethereum, I'm like, wait, why the fuck did I do that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I had the same thing when I think my first bridge I used was the Rainbow Bridge from Ethereum to Near. And I remember I sent the transaction. I was like, wait, shit, I should have done this with like a test amount. Like I shouldn't have sent so much money the first time I did this, And it's and now it's like very
No, I mean, I remember I haven't used Polygon Bridge in a while either, but Polygon Bridge used to take days.
Right.
Yeah. Right. If your transaction didn't get reorged and lost, and you'd have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Then one more question, Burnt, for you. This is a little bit of a different one. So we both agree there's no one chain takes all. There will be application-specific chains for the biggest consumer apps. That means that block space will practically be commoditized across like thousands, if not millions, of L2s. with sort of like the value of block space trending to zero, who's making money here, right? Like where do you see value
Well,
flowing?
it's a commodity. Still a commodity, just as the internet's a commodity. It's okay to be a commodity.
Yeah, for sure. But like, where do you see value flowing, like within these networks, right? Like, will it be the application-specific L2s that make money? Will it be the apps that are able to extract money? Is it the...
I hope it's the apps. I hope it's the apps. I would say for the good of what we're actually doing, I hope it's the applications that can make money, right? Because we're also probably in the next, if not this next bull market, the one after that, like I think we're going to need to figure out how to exist as an industry without having tokens,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
let's just have it, like having a company just making money needs to be normal.
I think it's actually trending there with block space, sort of like the price of an asset, block
Agreed.
space going to zero, or like trending to zero. Like it will never hit zero, but
Mhm.
it's trending to zero. I think that the only value that will be left in crypto will be sort of like data flow or order flow
Yep,
of the users. And guess who
absolutely.
owns the user flow? It's the applications, right? So
Yes,
I think the
exactly.
thesis is sort of like the closer you are to the top of the stack, the more money you'll make. Curious to see how you guys think about that at Zion and sort of like how you try to position to be ready for that shift.
Well, I mean, I hope so, right? Because I think there's two things to that. Number one is I hope next bull market, no one ever sees a gas fee ever again. No user sees a gas fee ever again, right? Very similarly to, again, how I pay for an AWS bill sometimes for like the Burnt website, the developers are going to be paying that for the user. And it's minimal, right? Ideally, to your point, it'll go to zero and it'll be minimal, and I think the way that we're positioning ourselves for that is a volume game, right? And I think the consumer, you look at like Ethereum and a lot of the decisions coming from Ethereum, which was, you know, gas fees are okay. I'm okay spending $70 to send $500,000, right? And I think you had Solana coming in and I'm speaking from my perspective of like 2021, which was you had Solana coming in and being like, oh, actually you can spend pennies on this. And then you got this entire new market and you had this NFT explosion because anyone and their mother could come and do and have fun, right? You didn't need to be this mega whale. You didn't need to spend a lot of money to be able to do it, right? And so you then got more opportunities, you got more applications, you got more products because of this kind of shift. And I think Ethereum's playing catch up right now. But it kind of, I mean, I don't think it's like the defense mechanism, right? But I think once you start getting to, the concept where a user shouldn't see gas fees, you go off of volume. And I think for us, again, we kind of go off of volume rather than saying we expect people to be trading $500,000. I want like there to be zero cost reactions, right? I want you to be able to do something. I think Farcaster probably does this well as well, right? Which is you could probably have a lot of transactions onto something and then settle. But I do think that the volume game is where you play there. And I think the user game as well, right? Like if we had all the users and we were a simple internet company, like a Web2 company, then most of the companies in this industry would be fucked, right? Because we don't have the users to support that growth, right? We don't have support the valuations, right? And a lot of it is we need to increase the total addressable market, which is why we're here.
Yeah, I think also to say to that, like, if you have demand on the application layer and applications don't need to issue a token and issue incentives to just basically incentivize usage, like when you have applications that sort of bring users in for repeatable, traffic and usage, just like a website like Amazon does, right? Like Amazon doesn't need to give out like a token or like a share incentive to use their product. People use it because they need the product in their life and they enjoy the experience, right? And I think that as applications within crypto begin to actually have sustainable user bases that are generating real income, this real revenue gets passed on to the sort of infrastructure layer by that demand. I also think what you said, like, if you're like, let's say spending $70 on a transaction fee to send 500K around the world, I always kind of look at Bitcoin and Ethereum as like these sort of more expensive, slower, but like more secure L1s. I think
I was just gonna say that.
yeah, and I think like if you want to send $100 million, you do it with Bitcoin. If you want to send like $1 million, you do it in ETH. If you want to send like $50 to pay someone back from dinner, do it on your Phantom wallet, right? With Solana or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, for users in the future, we're going to start to see that experiences are tailored to what the actual infrastructure is able to provide. And it won't matter where it happens, but it's just like all is handled behind the scenes. And I think that this is kind of like what we need to aim for as an industry, which is just that we don't have to kind of look at the transaction fees or like how we're going to incentivize usage. We just look at, okay, does this business work? Is it sustainable? And does it generate demand that can then pay for the block space that it requires to have users interact with it continuously? And if all those boxes are checked, then you get a normal, successful business that doesn't need to, basically issue incentives. And I think, Noble is a great example of this with their chain that they launched, with inflation at zero. And also for SEDA, we also launched with our inflation at zero because, we believe that the demand for block space should be there before you issue, sort of incentives in the form of inflation, just because you should have a product that has product market fit before you start issuing incentives like that. And I think that that's kind of what we're starting to see more and more with new infrastructure projects as well.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I think you're getting better at this, right? Like, I mean, you look back in the day and you had, looking at 2017 ICO days compared to what we're seeing today, it's a night and day difference of improvement, right? So we're getting there, right?
100%. Actually, just to wrap up in this hour, some of the community wanted to jump up. I assume everyone's good to take some questions. We've got the cult following from Zion, which we love to see. Coming in droves here. Dimitri was his first person.
Hey guys, what's up?
So I brought him
Of course Dimitri's the first. Of course
Okay,
Dimitri's the fucking
a
first.
regular face.
What do you have to say, Dimitri? Let's hear what you have to
Well,
fucking say, Dimitri.
What was this for? Oh, hey guys. Hi
Yeah,
everyone.
mic check.
What's up, friends?
Dimitri.
Hey,
Yeah?
Dimitri.
Dimitri, are you eating right now?
We can hear him. No?
Hey guys.
Oh,
Hey
he's
guys.
eating, yeah.
Are you hearing me?
Yes.
The floor is all yours.
Okay, guys. Honestly, I think this space is one of the most interesting we've had in a while. You don't know why? I think because the right questions were asked, and
All right. Well,
it seems like
Dimitri's sorting it out. We've got another.
No.
Oh, I heard him. No, I can hear
no, I
him.
see
Yeah,
him.
we can
We
hear
can
him.
hear
We
him.
can hear him.
He was complimenting us. He was
Well,
complimenting
being
us.
so
Put him
nice.
back on.
It's been
God
the
fucking damn
vibes
it.
have been there. Bring it back.
What's happening?
Go.
How do I unmute him? Oh, I hate to hear it. Where's the unmute option? Unmute someone and then I can't unmute.
Absolute rug.
Oh man.
Dude, he was like, this is one of the best spaces I've been in. The questions were impeccable. And you're like, well, why he figures his shit?
Man,
Let's just get stay off here.
I'm going to remove you, Dimitri. I'm going to bring you straight back up, okay? I mean,
are you hearing me? Okay, guys.
Here we go.
Yep.
Yes. We can hear you.
Being sent right now. Dimitri, send me a request if you can't see that invite. Let's get you back up there.
And he's gone
He's
again.
speaking.
Here he goes.
Oh, is he?
Let's go.
Dimitri?
Dimitri, are you there?
Sam?
Sam? Sam.
Sam.
You got to unmute Dimitri. That was muted you by default by bringing you back on. So if you're on your phone, bottom left. Or just type it in the comments at this point and
I think at this point we don't deserve to hear what Dimitri has to say.
I hate to say it.
Hey guys.
Wait.
Guys,
Here he
I'm
is.
here again.
There it is.
Yes.
Yes.
Fucking hell. Okay. Hi everyone. So, guys, let's begin. Honestly, I think this space is one of the most interesting we've ever had in a while. You know why?
Tell us.
Why is that?
Because the right questions were asked, I think, and it seems like Anthony is in a good mood and really ready to talk, which isn't always the case, really. Who know him know this.
I'm always ready to talk. I don't know what you're talking about.
Was that
Thank you so much.
question, Dimitri?
Was that the question?
Yes.
Was that it?
First of all, I want to say, I want to ask Anthony. Anthony, as I know, yesterday was your birthday, yes?
Yes, it was.
Happy birthday.
Yesterday,
you.
your birthday, Anthony, yes?
Yes, it was. Oh, motherfucker. Can you not hear me?
He said
No,
yes. He said yes,
we can
Dimitri.
hear
Oh,
you.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
Dimitri,
okay.
he's got us on a cliffhanger. He's like, is he going to ask the question?
God damn
He's
it.
gonna.
You're so good at suspense,
It's
Dimitri.
just
What the
building up.
fuck?
He's just going back to take more bites of his food before he asks the second
Yeah,
part of
guys,
his question.
sorry, I need to be the stick to the plan. Okay, I've been rambling a lot and not even introduced myself. My name is Mitty. Some of you might know me, some of might not, but I'm here today for a reason, really. I gotta say that the work done by the Burnt team is just incredible, really. Teaming up with Hyperlane was super cool, in my opinion, and the opinion of all our community. We all talked about it. It must have been tough, really. Just, I want to ask Anthony about it. Is it tough?
No, not at all. Next question. Didn't even break a fucking sweat.
All right. Doesn't
All right,
miss sleep.
thanks very much.
Thank you, Dimitri.
I'm going to hand over to the second community member who wanted to speak here. Nail, drop your question, sir. The floor is yours. Nail Gendar.
NA legendary, I think.
Oh, that's so funny. I can only read the first part and then it's dots, so I didn't put that together. But yeah, you're right. That's why you're the coder.
Nalgandar, what do you want?
All right. Well, that was one of the more successful bringing up people to the panels that I've ever
I think
had.
this is
All right, but let's wrap. We're rounding out the hour here. You can drop some questions in the comments. I think that's probably the best way to go moving forward. But let's just do a round of like alpha or anything that you're excited about in the industry, directly from Zion or anything else, and then we'll go round through to both Peter and Jasper as well.
definitely. I mean, mainnet soon's got to be the biggest one of that. Obviously, we had this really, really exciting, successful campaign with Uber, Baskin Robbins, and a bunch of other brands. Was kind of one of our main projects, RNOS, and really, really excited to see where they go. Probably going to be having a Twitter space with them soon. But most people here know they're an awesome team as well. Ton of awesome fucking names coming as well. More brands. Bigger projects, and really, really excited for kind of everything there. Yeah, I mean, this is honestly, I think to kind of echo Dimitri, you guys did ask some awesome fucking questions, and it was extremely refreshing and genuinely was a great conversation.
Nice. Glad to hear it. Thank you. From our end, I think we have our first sort of integration partners that'll be starting to integrate on our DevNet. So looking forward to that.
Oh yeah.
Very excited to plug SEDA into Burnt. Into Zion as well. Don't plug it into you. And don't insert it.
Please.
But yeah, I think that's the most exciting part. We have some tweaks to our DevNet, making sure we get the throughput we need to get the first integrations going, and then we go from there. Yeah, mainnet soon also, TM.
Awesome. Hell yeah.
Nice
Yeah,
one.
from my side,
Peter,
just really appreciate you coming up here. Jasper pretty much said it all. Super excited to get integrations live over the next couple of weeks on DevNet. And yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us a little bit more about Zion. Super excited about what you guys are building. And I think, we need more of this collaboration in the space of more projects, like you said, coming together and building super cool infra to all work together to kind of basically extract all the shitty stuff from Web3, and hopefully move past calling it Web3 and just, it's the internet soon, So thank you so much for coming up.